the Hebrew language helps us to understand the significance of the man who was thrown into the grave of Prophet Elisha, and he revived, he came back to life, and he stood on his feet. And he is white. Of course, it is a very strange occurrence, but why does the Bible put that particular story there? A man is being hastily thrown. So why do we have this strange story? It is just there. You can easily miss what it is speaking. But to understand this, we go back to the Hebrew language, because it is very rich in trying to bring out these stories. So the Hebrew word that is used there is the word shalak. That is cast. That is thrown. So this dead man was shalak, if we may see. He was cast into the bones of Prophet Elisha. And we see immediately his body came into contact with the bones of Prophet Elisha. This man revived. He came back to life and he stood on his feet. Now, we have the same image of bones coming back to life later in the book of Ezekiel chapter 37, where we see the prophet Ezekiel prophesying, and we see the bones coming together, reviving and eventually coming back to life and standing on their feet. The same Hebrew word is used there, shalak. So this is an image of resurrection. And in Ezekiel's case, that was shalak. It is a case of reviving, coming back to life, coming back from exile. Now back to 2 Kings chapter 30. We read that God does not destroy Israel. Remember, if you read Kings Chronicles, you find Israel, both the northern kingdom and the tribe of Judah, they had messed up. And they were being taken as exile to Babylon, to that captivity. And so they thought they have lost everything. They'll never come to their lands again and all of that. But what you find is that there were still prophets who were saying, you will go, but you still come back. So God was raising prophets to tell them that God has not cast them. That word again, shalak, that God has not cast them from his presence. Talking about the children of Israel as they were going to exile. So God has not destroyed them. God has not cast them. That God has not thrown them. So by understanding this, you understand in the Hebrew mind, because remember, the Bible was not written to you, but for us. So the audience, they knew by being taken into exile. For them, it was like a death sentence. But we see the prophets that God was raising, they were promising that we will come back from exile. To them, in the Hebrew mind, to these people, they understood that they're talking about dying and then coming back to life. They clearly got the picture. So what exactly was the hope of the Israelites? Of course, their hope was the same as this man who had been cast, that had been thrown into the grave of Elisha, and he revived. The same hope was to be with the children of Israel, because they could do nothing. They were under an oppressive, superpower Babylon at that time, and they had been taken. Their religion had been stripped off. Their way of life, their family, everything that made life to them had been completely, the way of worship, the temple had been torn. You see, everything had been stripped into a certain death. So, to them, when you talk to an Hebrew at that time, they understood when we are going to exile, it means that we are dead. We are completely finished. So their only hope was the hope like this man who was cast into the pit of Prophet Elisha. So the same scenario as this man who was cast, that was thrown, that was shalak into the pit of Prophet Elisha. It is the same case scenario that God was painting to the nation of Israel. That you come into contact to the prophetic word. Remember, if you begin all the way from the letters of Moses, Moses had promised them that God will rise a prophet like me, whom you should hear. So by that prophetic word, the Bible is speaking that his word is life. When you come into contact into that word, you come to life. You come into that spirit-filled life. It is the same thing. This is the pattern. God desires, remember talking about Titus chapter 2:11, he said that It is the will of God to have every man saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. So God wants every person in this world to come into contact with that prophet, that prophetic word of life that brings hope. So when we're reading these stories, they're not careless things that are being dropped here and there. No, they're bringing you to the saving knowledge of Jesus.